Evening all, and welcome to 2019 and the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams, and we're going to be a bit more serious tonight. We've had several complaints. People obviously have issues with some of the humour in the show, and they have issues with some of the things that I'll be addressing later on. So we'll get a bit serious this evening. Anyway, let's get into the links. And to listen live, it's Spreaker.com/user/895-5881. And we have the articles website, which is expanding by the day, called thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have all the archives of all the past shows, plus the must listen to shows for the benefit of the new members. And we now have a section for Kim and the Manor World Holding Trust separate. We have the shielding, grounding and centering documents, which is about helping you, and also how to fix psychic attacks and stuff like that. So there's also a search engine, so if you type in 4-year loop, just as an example, you'll find it comes up in the transcripts of the shows, which are all on Patreon. So thank you to all who have donated again this month, and for those who want to go and visit Patreon and perhaps donate, it's patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the Facebook social media alternative on MeWe.com. That's also Truth, Honour and Integrity. And if you can't find us at MeWe, send an email, which is also the email for comments. Some of those comments I would rather not have seen this week. It's been a plethora, but that's the way it is at the moment. Clowns will attack. Anyway, comments and questions for the show. truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. We also have the People's Club, and that's all about the foundation, on thepeoplesclub.org. So this is the 5th show in 6 days, plus the Zoom call. That went on for 5 hours on New Year's Eve and into New Year's Day, which was a lot of fun. And this is the 7th show since the 23rd of December, so off we go again. Of course, I don't know whether how many tuned into last night. That was my first ever show outside of Cosmic Voice or THI Connections. But it was good. We covered a lot, and they are obviously, given the guests they had on there in the past, they were open to it, and their listeners were highly in agreement and asking when I'm coming back. So I expect I will be asked to go on more shows throughout the year, and we can get more of the message across, which will be good. Right, let's get into the Zoom, the news rather. Dianne Feinstein of California called on Thursday for the Senate Judiciary Committee to hold a hearing after 2 children died in the custody of Customs and Border Protection. Ignoring the fact that many died previously whilst Obama was in control, but that gets overlooked, as we know. Feinstein, the top Democrat on the committee, made a request in a letter to GOP Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who is set to chair the committee in the new year. And she said, these heartbreaking incidents, I don't recall her saying that when they were all being harvested, but there you go, are sadly consistent with the previous reports of widespread abuse of children in immigration custody and the judgment of medical and mental health organisations that the Border Patrol facilities are not adequately staffed or equipped to properly care for the children. Well, given Mr. Trump's not even been in 2 years yet, what happened to it being adequately staffed and equipped in the previous 8 years of the Democratic government? You know, these people forget rather quickly, and they think everyone else forgets. Well, some do. Now, earlier this month, the Department of Homeland Security said a 7-year-old Guatemalan girl, Jacqueline Carl McWin, had died hours after being taken into Border Patrol protection. Now, the agency said this week that an 8-year-old Guatemalan boy, Felipe Alonso Gomez, had died late Christmas Eve in the custody of Customs and Border Protection. Now, the Homeland Security Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, said on Wednesday all children in Border Patrol custody had received medical screenings, and she had directed a series of additional actions to care for those who enter our custody. Now, the Customs and Border Protection Commission, Kevin McLennan, said Wednesday that he was reiterating his calls for more help and resources from Congress. And in a letter, Feinstein cited the deaths of the 2 children along with reports of a hospitalized 5-month-old and murdered children in Tijuana. Nielsen reiterated Wednesday that 6 migrants, none of whom were children, died in the custody of Border Protection during 2018. And she noted it had been more than 10 years since a child died in the agency's custody. What a load of lies that is. So a week after the government failed to agree on a final funding bill, well, they agreed on the bill, just that clowns decide to meddle with it. The Environmental Protection Agency is preparing to follow suit and also shut down. Now, the agency, which had enough funding to remain open for a week, courtesy of the Trust, after the federal government officially ran out of funding, will begin furloughing employees as of Friday, and in the event of an appropriation is not passed by midnight Friday, the EPA will initiate orderly shutdown procedures. In a message, and read a message obtained by the Hill from the acting administrator Andrew Wheeler to the employees. Of course, the IRS has now followed suit. Hopefully, whilst they're in shutdown, things can be developed on that front. Of course, last week we had an explosion at a Con Ed plant in Astoria, New York, that sent a wave of bright blue flashing lights across the skyline and disrupted power at LaGuardia Airport, causing delays to some flights. Now, the light could be seen from Manhattan shortly after 9 p.m. following a brief electrical fire at the substation in the northern Queens neighbourhood. That's more fun and games. More fun and games. LaGuardia had to switch to backup facilities during the blackout, and power has since been restored, but not before Delta Airlines and American Airlines had to divert some of their flights to nearby airports. Other services were being delayed accordingly. We're having a lot of issues to do with airports. The one in London with the so-called drone, except there was no drones. One group of officials says there was no drones, and another one saying there was. But either way, I don't see how a single drone, or even if there was a fleet of drones, can keep an airport shut for 30 odd hours. It doesn't make sense. Egypt next. Police in Egypt have killed dozens of militants during security raids on their hideouts, according to the Interior Ministry this week. The raids killed 40 terrorists in Giza and North Sinai on Saturday morning, and it said militants were planning a series of attacks on tourist sites, churches and military personnel. Yes, we all know who they are. For those new, these are paid mercenary groups designed to cause trouble or continue trouble in the Middle East as peace is being organised within the Middle East behind the scenes. Now, the raids followed Friday's roadside bomb attack on a tour bus in Giza, and no group has yet said it was behind the blast, which is unusual. Normally terrorists are very honest and say it was me, which is contrary to what everyone else who does anything wrong says. And unfortunately it killed 3 Vietnamese tourists and an Egyptian tour guide. Well, Islamist militants have targeted tourists in Egypt in the past. Now, police killed 30 militants during 2 early morning raids in Giza, while the remaining 10 were killed in El Harish, the capital of North Sinai province. And the Interior Ministry group said a group of terrorists were planning to carry out a series of aggressive attacks targeting state institutions, particularly economic ones. No surprise there, given what's going on, as well as tourism, and also Christian places of worship. It's all that jihadist stuff again. It also added that police had seized bomb-making materials, ammunition, and a large number of weapons during the raid. Back to New York. It seems they're all being routed out now, following the NXIVM stuff and a whole heap of others of skullduggery that's been going on with these private groups. And the latest is 4 members of a Jewish sect have been charged with kidnapping a younger brother and sister in New York State. Now, the prosecutor says the men belong to the ultra-Orthodox Lev Tahor group, which is based in Guatemala. Now, they were accused of adopting a 14-year-old girl and her 12-year-old brother from the village of Woodridge, which is north of New York City, and the men planned to take the pair back to Guatemala after their mother fled the sect 6 weeks earlier. Now, the woman had reportedly feared for the children's safety and felt the group, which was founded by her father, was becoming more extreme under the leadership of her brother. And its teachings reportedly include that women must be veiled from head to toe in black tunics, which is hardly Jewish, is it not? And the 4 men aged between 20 and 45 are accused of kidnapping the siblings from their home on December the 8th and taking them to a small airport near the city of Scranton in Pennsylvania. They were then flown to Mexico, but located in the town of Tenango del Aire on Friday morning, and have since thankfully been reunited with the mother in Woodridge. As for the 3 suspects, Nachman Hellbrand's Meyer Rosner and Jakob Rosner were deported from Mexico on Thursday and arrested on their arrival in the US. And the 4th suspect, Aaron Rosner, was arrested by the FBI in Brooklyn on the 23rd of December and is accused of providing financial support to the group. All men have been charged with 1 count of kidnapping, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. Hopefully that'll be another one of those dodgy groups that gets shut down, a bit like Scientology and some of them Mormon groups. Another migrant caravan is heading north, this time from Honduras, but it's not coming to America this time, with an estimated 15,000 people. And as the thousands of migrants who fled the Central American country in October remain stranded at the Mexican border waiting to enter the US, this even larger group is prepared to depart for the north on January the 15th. They say they are even bigger and stronger than the last caravan. Irma Garrido, a member of the migrant advocacy group Rectiva Tijuana Foundation, said the latest caravan will likely pick up even more people from El Salvador and Guatemala as it heads towards Mexico. Like the last caravan, the group plans to share its progress, including which routes they will be taking on social media. And However, unlike previous groups, Garrido said that the members of this caravan are planning to stop short of the US and find work in Mexico. Given that shelters in Tijuana are already overcrowded with migrants waiting to apply for asylum in San Diego. This is becoming a common problem. You know, it's a problem in America, it's a problem in Canada, it's a problem in Europe. They're just forcing people out of countries and essentially emptying it out, a bit like California, really. And I'm hoping we can make some progress on that, where those people can go back to their countries and be provided with the basic essentials in life and a nicer way to earn a living than getting involved in some of the more unreputable trades that go on in those countries, like drugs and prostitution and all kinds of other stuff. You know, there's plenty of industry to go right round the world to not need. I said this in one of the review shows. You've got people in Africa shooting tigers and elephants and rhinos to make money. You know, we have the funds with the trust, once the clowns are out the way, to provide sufficient funding to create industries where the people of those countries can do real work that is not harming to the animals or the planet. Where there's a will, there's a way. Portal people continue on their digging dirt on Donald Trump track. Now that the Russian collusion is once again proven to be a load of BS. And this time they're targeting Mr. Trump's New Jersey golf club and state they may have committed federal immigration crimes by handing out fake green cards and social security numbers to workers. This is according to new evidence collected by prosecutors. I wonder who those prosecutors were. Now, the New Jersey Attorney General's office is investigating the allegations, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller, go figure, and the FBI are part of the probe as well. They just keep digging dirt and hoping some of it sticks. You know, Trump's got skeletons in his closet, as all politicians and businessmen who are that wealthy. Make no mistake about it. But this is a witch hunt that goes way above anything else. I don't recall Anne being questioned or Obama to this level. You know, Obama was in 8 years and didn't get questioned and ridiculed and threatened and harassed like Trump has in less than 2. You know, where's the balance? Attorney Annabelle Romero, who represents several undocumented immigrants who used to work at the Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, says he handed over the fraudulent green cards and social security numbers that the club gave to 2 of his clients, Victoria Morales and Sandra Diaz. I wonder how much he was, Annabelle, maybe a woman, mightn't it? I wonder how much that attorney was paid to do that. It's beyond a joke. An Oregon senator demanded to know on Friday what President Trump's administration is planning to do about the United States' relationship with Saudi Arabia after it emerged the country may have helped one of their citizens flee a week before his trial. Ron Wyden said in a letter first obtained by a local publication, the Oregonian, to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, really, and the acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, and Friday that the new theory from authorities is Abdul Samir Noura used an illicit passport to jet home on a private jet provided by the Saudi consulate should be reason to push forward with action. Given it was in that region, who's to say it wasn't the SSP who took him back? and yet they'll just blame Trump. Funny that. Noura is believed to have taken off in June last year, and 10 months after mowing down and killing Fallon Smart, who was 15, in Portland. The Saudi government recently confirmed to US Marshals that this July that Noura had returned to Saudi Arabia just 7 days after he went missing. Officials said they were doing everything they can to get Noura back to the United States, and Wyden continued, said, since the US does not have an extradition treaty with Saudi Arabia, what steps is the Trump administration taking to ensure Mr. Noura is accountable for the death of Ms. Smart? And he has demanded a response from the State and Justice Departments by the end of January. Lawyers for the accused NXIVM sex slave cult leader and former Smallville actor Allison Mack are arguing that she isn't guilty of inducing forced labour if the Church of Scientology isn't guilty of the same charge. Well, yes, you did hear that correct. In court papers filed in Brooklyn federal court, Mack's lawyers argued that Mack's threat to release naked photos and disparaging statements made by cult members against their relatives doesn't rise to the threat of serious harm required to prove someone engaged in forced labour. Now, Mack and NXIVM leader Keith Raniere are accused of using the photos and statements to get free work and to force sex with Mr. Raniere. The government argues that Miss Mack obtained forced labour through threats of serious harm, with serious harm being the embarrassment that would result from the exposure of one's collateral. For those who don't remember, we outed NXIVM on THI about 7 months before it broke publicly. And one of the conditions of joining that cult is everyone, it was mainly all women, from what I gather, they all had to take all the clothes off and have pictures taken of them before they could join the cult. This is a common practice where they always have something on you. And after they'd had fairly explicit pictures taken, they were then branded by hot irons. You know, it boggles me my mind that how many women signed up for it. Here, come in here and take your clothes off and let me take pictures of you. It really boggles the mind. But this is what happens with these mind control style cults. And thankfully they're crashing down. Anyway, the courts have found, however, that such an outcome, albeit embarrassing, does not amount to serious harm under the statute. The argument cites a 2009 case in which a couple unsuccessfully sued the Church of Scientology for forced labour, based on the same thing. Canada. Next year could see the highest gas prices in Canada since 2014 because of the new carbon taxes they're introducing up there. And current low prices caused by a glut in supply in recent months are set to rebound sharply in 2019, according to Dan McTeague. I wouldn't bet on that. Senior petroleum analyst at gasbuddy.com. We still have a week or two before things get really strange, McTeague said from Oakville, Ontario. You're going to see 2019 increases because of carbon taxes be much more expensive than in 2018, which puts us at the highest prices for energy going back to 2014. As oil-producing countries tackle their oversupply of oil, no surprise there either, the overhang will start to be whittled away come January, not just in OPEC, but here in Canada as well, with the curtailment of 325,000 barrels by the Alberta government. And he forecast extreme volatility will become to characterise 2019. So they would like. Mr. Trump had to step in and attack a retired four-star Army General Stanley McChrystal on Tuesday for questioning his honesty and morality. I'll have more on how or why that's taken place in the op-ed pieces. The Commander-in-Chief mocked McChrystal's military credentials and derided him as a dog, a term the President frequently uses to criticise opponents. Now, McChrystal recently said that he could not work for an immoral person like Trump, and the former top commander of the US and international forces in Afghanistan, no surprise there, was asked if he would accept a job in the Trump administration during an interview on ABC this week that aired on Sunday, and he replied, "I'd say no. It is important for me to work for people who I think are basically honest, who tell the truth as best they know it." And after 34 years in the US Army, McChrystal was forced to resign in 2010 by former President Barack Obama after the publication of a Rolling Stone article that quoted members of his staff criticising the then president's team. A lot of projecting going on. Perhaps they need to look at themselves. I gave out a warning of New Year celebrations in New York and London the other day, and there was credible threats, rumours flying around, particularly in New York more than London. But when you see what is playing out, and then you get this type of rhetoric from the US Strategic Command, who've made an unexpected joke in a now deleted Twitter post about American military might on Monday in its New Year's Eve message, noting the big, in inverted commas, Times Square ball drop celebration at midnight. The Unified Command's account tweeted, "If ever needed, we are #ready to drop something much, much bigger." Now, the joke was followed by a slickly produced video of stealth jets with the words "stealth, ready and lethal" flashing across the screen. And the tweet encouraged followers to watch to the end. If you do, you'll see 2 bombs released from a plane, followed by several massive explosions. Now, the tweet was later deleted, and a subsequent tweet from the Unified Command's account said the first was in poor taste and does not reflect our values. We apologise. That was another threat, just to make people clear. Another threat. We're going to drop 2 planes from a stealth. This is what we're dealing with in this country. It's been hijacked. And whilst everyone spends their time hating on Trump, this is what's carrying on, and no one's saying a damn word. It beggars belief. Yellow vests, not quite, but similar, of women in southern India state of Kerala formed a 620 kilometre, which is 385 mile, human chain in support of gender equality here, amid a row over access to a prominent Hindu temple. Now, the Sabarimala shrine was historically closed to women of menstruating age, defined between the ages of 10 and 50. But some bizarre rules around the world. India's top court overturned the ban in September. I think we reported on that in the show. But protesters have since attacked the female visitors, and the Women's Wall was organised by the state's left-wing coalition government. Officials told BBC that around 5 million women from various parts of Kerala had gathered across all national highways to form the chain, which stretched from the northern tip of Kasaragod to the southern end of Kerala. I'm not pronouncing that name. It's got about 16 letters in it. Organisers had predicted a turnout of around 3 million, and officials said the short demonstration was to combat inequality and counter the efforts of right-wing groups that support the ban on women. And one young demonstrator, Kavita Das, said this is a great way of saying how powerful women are and how we can empower ourselves and help each other. Of course, I support the move to allow women of all ages into the temple, and I don't think tradition or any kind of backwardness should stop women. Those who want to pray must have the right to pray. And another woman stated, it's not the main issue here today. The main issue is we believe men and women are equal. Absolutely. So kudos for them for forming that chain. Right, that's the end of the news. I'm going to go into Q&A. There's a few left over from previous. We'll have a music break and then we'll get into some intel and a few op-ed pieces, and we'll see how it goes. Looking for some perspective. I try not to let it bother me when POTUS goes to California and acts like fires are due to uncleared forests and Brown is a great guy, when he knows that paradise was annihilated and by whom. There's a public posture and a private one. Rest assured, Mr. Trump knows exactly who did what, when, where and why in California. He knows. But when you've got a psychotic, unbiased, portal people media, what chance has he got? How many people are actually supporting him? How many in the military are supporting him? How many in the governments are supporting him? And never mind his right-hand man not, I might add. And this is what he's facing. You know, as said in a recent show, you're not going to be able to make sense of Trump's tweets. There's a lot of distraction in him, sleight of hand, throwing people off track or pushing it away. You're not going to understand the portal people because they've just gone into complete retard meltdown. As far as I'm concerned, they know nothing that's going on. Nothing. So Trump has to be diplomatic in public, but privately, rest assured, he knows exactly what went on there. And he also knows it was the same ones that fired on his plane, remember. Next part, I mean, how can he go to Bush's funeral and shake hands with those who are in the imminent arrest lineup? Is this simply an Academy Award performance? I think I understand about not showing your hand in war, but maybe I don't. Or maybe POTUS isn't what he says he is. Again, it's all about diplomacy, isn't it? You know, he did the right thing. He turned up, he paid his respects, he shook hands with everyone. You know, you see what happened after the McCain funeral. He was asked not to go. He didn't go. And then the media criticised him for being disrespectful. So there's no winning with the portal people. They have a fixed agenda that they'll criticise Trump if he does or he doesn't. Whether he's good, bad or indifferent. The rhetoric coming out from the media borders on insane. So Trump knows a lot more of what's going on than the public and a lot of the alt media realise. Would he like to do a whole heap of things if he had his way? Absolutely. You've seen what happened with his executive order for the towards the Treasury to issue the cards for the disaster relief fund for people in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, North and South Carolina, when mercenaries stormed the Treasury and basically said, we don't care what Mr. Trump says. This is what's going on. I feel it's a good idea to live away from the city and become more self-sustainable because of what's added to our water, food and a new up-and-coming 5G, and also maybe move to a warmer climate. Yeah, I can agree with that. Over time, in fact over the next 40 years, there will be a migration inland. You know, they've corralled us all onto the coast, and then they were going to have accidents, giant tsunamis and wiping coastline out and people with it. It's been going on for about a decade now. And there's no real reason or need anymore with the technology we have and the funds to support it for 80% of the world's population to live close to the water. There is no reason anymore. You know, that was because they didn't have pipelines and all the other stuff. Well, we have that technology, and the idea of everyone living by the coast is roughly about 150 years out of date. You know, I took a trip from Florida to where I am now, and it was, you know, you're talking well over 2,000 miles drive, and I hardly seen any towns in the whole of the 2,000 miles I drove. Plenty of room for small towns with new industries, so that people move away from the coast and move inland. You just have to make sure that the facilities and the infrastructure is able to sustain it. But then if you look at the big cities now, are they really sustaining? Where the car, you know, New York, taxis go about 3 miles an hour because there's too many cars, there's too many people. And there's plenty of open space in New York State, or New York City, you know, outside of Manhattan and whatnot. Why is everyone crammed in there? So maybe the person who asked the question, you can get ahead of it and move away from the city. And yes, I think we all should, myself included, should become more self-sustainable. I'm struggling to understand the parents, Draco and AI. Yes, many people do. If they've been around for thousands of years, then why not microchip us 1,000 years ago? Good question. It was never thought it was going to be required until a technological age, in case something went wrong. That was the backup, as I understood it. Maybe we are microchipped already. In essence, yes, with the nanoparticles. In essence, yes, with the RFID, which is in all your clothes. And then you've got your phones, and then you've got your Alexa machines and TVs, chipped, computers, laptops, you name it. So there's always a way of tracking anybody these days. If all beings on this earth have signed a peace treaty, what about the animals we kill to eat? Wouldn't that be a breach? No, we've actually got to eat. And humans were designated to be the leader of the planet as such. Some animals are quite prepared to be sacrificed. The problem we have is the farming methods are not conducive to what should be going on. You know, corralling thousands of chickens into a tiny pen, or salmon, same as, you know, we're not catching animals in the traditional way, where they're prepared to a point, not all of them, to be sacrificed for the greater good. Perhaps we don't give thanks enough as part of the problem, but it's not a breach of the peace treaty. What is the connection between the funds of the trust and the supposed gold-backed currency to come to America? Struggling to... I don't know where that information's coming from. Supposed gold-backed currency to come to America. I'm assuming that's outside of the group. It's the gold to support the currency is already in America. Just has to be delivered when it's safe to do so and they can protect it. Currently they can't. How will those who have physical assets on hand add them to their account through the quantum system? I think you're kind of misunderstanding what the quantum system is. Yes, it's involved in banking, because the old system was similar, although not quantum, or not this type of quantum anyway. But your physical assets will go into, either you keep hold of them or you put them in a bank vault, the same as everything else. Hopefully in a bank that actually protects and doesn't steal it. There's a lot of that going on. Will there be a procedure to bring added to the system, and when will it be implemented? Not understanding that question, what you're saying about procedure to being added to the system, and when will it be implemented? The quantum system is already implemented. It's in every bank. It runs every bank. So it's not a case of when it's coming, it's already here. Much to the chagrin of the financial people, particularly the Rothschilds, who we'll have more about later. If several astral levels have been cleared, emptied out recently of dark energy and or lower frequency entities, as a result, does that naturally increase or raise the Midgard frequency to a more higher positive level as a whole for us? Yes. That, along with the source energy, will make a massive amount of difference going forward. Of course, there's a lot less now who can possess vessels and play games that way. There's a lot less who are being used for the dark magic by the Coven people. So that's going to have an effect as well. I don't know what I am. You are you. That's who you are. But at the very least, a virtuous, compassionate being, a process of sorts, with much heartfelt goodwill. I observe 50-50 and the 45-55, and I observe more and more crazed, grasping, greedy, hell-bent on me activities than earlier. Yes, this is what we said would happen. It's wheat and the chaff, isn't it? Except the chaff will not be discarded, they just have a longer journey than we do. And this is why I said migration in the future will be from their world into ours. You know, they have to do their inner work. They have to unlearn the lies. They have a long journey ahead. And I agree. You said you don't feel part of this. No, you're not. And neither are any of us in the group. At the same time, I don't sense or feel I'm on a second split timeline. Well, that's essentially what's going on. You know, does anything in their world look real? Where people just don't care. Don't care there's millions of children going missing and being killed. Don't care that politicians are raping them left, right and centre, or banks raping them left, right and centre, or Rothschilds. No, that's all conspiracy. Does the news make any sense in our world? No. It's a completely different world to ours. Their levels of thinking are completely different to ours. And it's getting more and more prevalent, like I said it would. And it will increase more this year. What is going on? Am I dead and remembering? No, you're not dead. You've already remembered in the main, given in your opening statement. Is this a kind of balancing? Eventually it will balance. At the moment it's not. There's far too few nice people who are service to others and not service to self, and hopefully that will balance out over time. Do you see much madness in your neighbourhood? Dear me. Yes, we've seen a lot of madness. Snipers, cars with bombs in them, fridges that miraculously jump off the side of a speeding truck that doesn't stop in front of the car. You name it. A little bit more special madness in the neighbourhood. That's it for the questions. Because I posted it late, you didn't get much chance. Unless there's any more on the Facebook, I'll do a quick check. That I can see. No. Right. We'll have a musical break and I'll come back with the intel and the op-ed pieces. What should we go with? Let's go with this one. Hi all and welcome back to the intel portion tonight, and lots of fun and games going on. The Fed, very early morning, which got Kim and I up, started hacking along with many others into the system, and then they when that failed, they tried to collect all the cash on hand in every American bank to then leverage it all to the HSBC Hong Kong Bank. They're now claiming they own every penny every American has, due to some federal act of 1934. That was blocked by Kim and the team. The Pentagon, same night, sat up all night and was waiting to receive their normal New Year's black budget, even though one hasn't arrived in over 4 years now. And they were promised the RV would be delivered by the Rothschilds and Mnuchin, who shouldn't even be there. And at about 4 a.m. New Year's Day, they gave up and went home because it didn't arrive. Mnuchin promised it would be all delivered by the 1st of the month, and as per usual, nothing happened except more hackers, loads and loads of hackers. It was like Bedlam New Year's Day. But then where would our show be? We couldn't fill up the show with hacking stories. So there you go. The Fed was also caught trying to install more backdoors this week into all banks and override systems. And we thank them for the new lesson that they've delivered to us, as that will now end also. Next item. The Fed stepped up again, fresh from another abject failure, and in their wisdom issued notices to all banks that they have blacklisted the Manor World Holding Trust globally, stating no one or country is allowed to do business with the Manor World Holding Trust. So Kim pondered briefly, laughed, and then sent this to the Fed and all the banks. The Trust would like to remind the Fed, as they are owned by the Trust and that they are registered under the Manor World Holding Trust Country Code, they have also subsequently blacklisted themselves also. So either they intended to blacklist themselves, or simply forgot, or simply just not that clever or bright. Either way, the trust was removed from the blacklist later that day. So because they all failed again, they started today, let's crash the markets again. Utter childishness. You know, the market was down 660 points again today. Plus then the portal people used that as another stick to beat Trump with. Look, the economy is crashing. Well, the economy is crashing because of the hundreds of years of looting. On New Year's Day, the clowns again threatened Mr. Trump. So much so that he had to retreat to a safe location. And this is becoming a more common occurrence than most people realise. There's been a raft of them. Now I wish to make clear the following statement is mine only, before the raft of mishearing people and other people that like to add other people into the narrative or twist it. And I'll repeat again for the hard of hearing, this is my opinion. At which point do the authorities in this country stand up not only for the people, but the president and this country they all avow to love and protect? It's not enough to sing the Star Spangled Banner with a fist pumping your chest and a tear in your eye. Because I'm sorry, at this point, it's all looking like acting and fakery. Your president and also your commander-in-chief, for those with selective memories, has been shot at with a missile fired from this soil. Fired at in Scotland, that killed his bodyguard who took the bullet. several other threats on his life, and yet not one mention of it on Portal People News. None. Why is that? Why is no one being arrested for threatening the president? Where's the investigatory committees? Why is no one being arrested for storming the Treasury building, contrary to what Mr. Trump's requests were? Why weren't the people of Citadel and Hillary arrested? They went against an executive order. Why are you allowing the Fed, Mnuchin, Hillary and many others to hijack this country and its people? The country you all confess to love so much. Why? Why do we have allegedly 60,000 sealed indictments, and yet highly level treasonists traipse around the country unabated with their death and destruction mode? Why? Why have various Democrats essentially threatened Trump's life with disgraceful and disparaging comments which have been aired on Portal People News, but have gone unchallenged and unpunished? Now, given the veracity Mnuchin went to Trump with a portion of my show back in September that was twisted into something that was clearly not, where is the same veracity? It matters not that some of you may dislike the president. Your duty is to protect him and this country. But like the RV crew, you've failed. Call yourself a patriot, which is a cleverly disguised term for nationalism, which is fascism in its full glory. But let's overlook that, shall we? You're not a real patriot in any way, shape or form. It's bad enough calling yourself a patriot to begin with, but a fake patriot is even worse. Our story will paint a poor picture of you all in the future when your demise comes, and it will. And quite frankly, you are an embarrassment to your ancestors who went before you. You want to be a real patriot? March into the criminal harvesting bank known as the Federal Reserve, remove all the staff and close that building down for good. And take the IRS with it. Those two entities have raped and pillaged the American people for long enough. And let's ignore the fact that their contract ran out in June 2012. We're now in 2019. They were finished, they're kaput, they're done, and they're dusted. And yet you allow them to subvert American politics and increase interest rates to the people when they have no license to do so. It's utter shameful. Stand up, authorities, and do your job. And I will repeat again for the hard of hearing, that is my opinion only. I received an email. Parts of this looks correct. I can't validate all 100% of it, but it looks fairly on the money. And it was to do with Benghazi and Bergdahl, who was released in exchange for 5 Taliban generals, which was in order to cover up the Obama-Hillary Stinger missile sales to Libya. Go figure. Now, Benghazi and the matching serial numbers, and Ambassador Stevens was sent to Benghazi to secretly retrieve US-made Stinger missiles that the State Department, led by Anne, had supplied to Ansar al-Sharia in Libya without congressional oversight or permission. Seeing a pattern? These people are just doing what they like. And you've got authorities sitting there doing nothing. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had brokered the Libya deal through Ambassador Stevens and a private arms dealer named Mark Turi, but some of the shoulder-fired Stinger missiles ended up in Afghanistan, go figure, where they were used against our own military to create another incident so they can have another war to fight some other non-existent militant group when they created all of them. And the money cycle continues. So on July the 25th, 2012, a US Chinook helicopter was downed by one of these Stinger missiles, not destroyed, only because the Taliban didn't actually arm the missile. Or was that really the Taliban? And the helicopter didn't explode, but it had to land, and an ordnance team recovered the missile's serial number, which led back to a cache of Stinger missiles kept in Qatar by the CIA. Oh my. Now, Obama and Hillary were in full panic mode, so Ambassador Stevens was sent to Benghazi to retrieve the rest of the Stinger missiles. And this was essentially a do-or-die mission. No, for Mr. Stevens, it was a sacrifice mission, as he knew too much. Which explains the stand-down orders given to multiple rescue teams during the siege of the US Embassy. Like I said, it was a sacrifice mission, just that Mr. Stevens wasn't aware. And it was the State Department, not the CIA, that supplied the Stinger missiles to our sworn enemies, because General Petraeus, better known as Betrayers, at the CIA would not approve supplying the deadly missiles due to their potential use against commercial aircraft. So then Obama threw General Petraeus under the bus when he refused to testify in support of Obama's phony claim of a spontaneous uprising caused by a YouTube video that had insulted Muslims. Mr. Obama and Hillary committed treason back in 2012, and yet those clowns still walk amongst us. And this is what essentially is the investigation is all about, why she had a private server in order to delete the digital evidence, and why Obama, 2 weeks after the attack, told the UN that the attack was a result of the YouTube video, even though everyone knew it was not. Furthermore, the Taliban knew that the administration had aided and abetted the enemy without congressional oversight or permission, so they began pressurizing, i.e. blackmailing, the Obama administration to release the 5 Taliban generals that were being held at Guantanamo. Bergdahl was just a useful pawn to cover the release of the Taliban generals, and everyone knew Bergdahl was a traitor, but Obama used Bergdahl's exchange for the 5 Taliban generals to cover that Obama was being coerced by the Taliban about the unauthorized Stinger missile deal. So we had a traitor as a president that was not only corrupt but compromised as well, and a Secretary of State that is a serial liar and killer, who perjured herself multiple times at the congressional hearing on Benghazi, and yet still walks amongst us, whoever that entity may be. But you got to remember that not a single military aircraft was called to help in Benghazi. Like 9/11, they were all told to stand down. Same people, same game, same pattern, same plan. And because the administration knew that our enemies, so-called enemies anyway, had Stinger missiles, if used to down those planes, it would likely be traced back to the CIA cache in Qatar, and then onto the State Department's illegitimate arms deal in Libya. Unbelievable. How far are we to go? I think I'll do one more piece and we'll have another song. And where are we next? So the shutdown of the government continues, and this could roll for quite some time, the way things are going. But because of the, according to the media anyway, it's all over $5 billion for the wall, according to the Portal people. But is it not indicative of a far larger issue for those who are capable of thinking for themselves? Why would you shut down a whole government if you're a Democrat over a $5 billion bill? In budget terms, it's like a $5 bill to most of us. You know, these are the same people who just handed over $700 billion to the military with no questions asked. Here, have $700 billion of the public's money so you can go and blow lesser countries into oblivion. There's no one question why they've never attacked Russia or China. According to these same Portal people, they're all baddies, Russia and China. No, they attacked Iraq for oil and Afghanistan for drugs. And the common denominator is neither country had any planes to fight back, which is why they've never attacked Iran as well, or North Korea for that matter. Do people not question those incidents? And clearly the Democrats have lost the plot over such a pittance in terms of the budget. So clearly there's another agenda here, is there not? Yes, that agenda is hijacking the country. So its people and also its economy. So their paymasters, the Rothschilds and the Federal Reserve and the Dragon Goons, can collapse the whole country and issue TRNs. Force Trump out as the people will turn against him because people are losing their jobs. Well, no, Trump, as I can tell you 100% from my own knowledge, Trump has done everything to keep those people in jobs and pay by arranging with Kim and the trust to keep them in pay, whilst the Democrats chose to play games. Now they're going to blame Trump, whilst the media blame Trump for everything now, for his stance on the wall. But it's their agenda that's carefully hidden by the Portal people that has now put many people out of a job or on standby. But these same people, don't you just wish they were that stringent with the budget during the 8 years of the Democrats and Obama? You know, penny pinching, over $5 billion. And yet under Obama, the national debt went from 8 trillion to 19 trillion. That's an 11 trillion increase in debt. Nearly 1.5 trillion per year extra, which is pretty much the current budget. But what did the people receive for that increase in spending? Did we see any benefits? Better paid jobs? More jobs? No, we saw jack shit. 11 trillion extra spent, and nobody can say where it went. Well, we know where it went. but now they want a penny pinch over 5 billion. In this week in the MeWe chat, I posted something and evidence of the 4-year loop stories that are still ongoing and being propagated in major media organisations as well as the alt media. Now, this one was the BBC, and it was said Jews forced from Guatemala village, dated August the 30th, 2014, but posted like it took place this week. And how is that relevant from 4 years ago? Well, clearly it's not. And what this is a classic agency tactic, and quite often they'll use the Jewish narrative to garner divisive discourse. But it's also a common tactic to garner data on who is being anti-Jewish in comments. This is what they're doing. It's a profiling tactic. And the 4-year loop is far more prevalent than people realise. If you partake in the rest of the alt media, you'll see how far their narrative is behind this show, and the likes of Randy's and the likes of the OIM lads. It's as though time stood still. But they're still talking about blue avians coming to save them, and the RV, and Nasara, and Nibiru's coming, etc. It hasn't altered the narrative, not one iota, and you will see it more and more. And hopefully we can get it shut down, because it's stolen an awful lot of people learning or unlearning the lies, where the narrative's just not moved on. You know, I did that show, Ground Crew Command, last night, you know, and they've had Corey Gordon, David Wilcock, and the Blue Avians, which our members now know doesn't exist. And so does Wilcock, which is why he's distanced himself. You know, and Benjamin Fulford, and they've had a number of those people that have kind of been lost away. They weren't all spouting shite at one point, but they kind of lost away. And in essence, the Gaia TV was anti-disclosure, not pro-disclosure. It was stalling it by repeating old stories and scripts, you know, which those of you with long memories, Cobra called him out for reading a script right out of an old book. And yeah, suddenly they're on Gaia TV, rather than tasty contracts that they received, and they were stolen disclosure. More about them later. Now, some people have written in fact, there's been a load of complaints recently about the humour, which is why this show's more serious this evening. You know, if people don't like the humour, I'll cut it out. But this is part of a coordinated attack that's been going on, where people are using anything to cause or create issues where there are none. You know, the Drake piece, I thought it was a load of fun. Some people decided it wasn't, and that's fine. You can't please all of the people all of the time. The other song was a bit more risque, and I take full responsibility for that. You know, it fitted into the narrative. If people are going to fight to be head penis, then why not play a penis song? But to some people that was a bit too much, and I accept it. But what started up again, as I received a fairly lengthy email today, trashing me and trashing the show and the narrative, and stating a whole heap of things that are clearly not true. And this followed on from several people complaining about what they described as my dismissive attitude and described as arrogant attitude regarding the RV. Following that lengthy email today by a more profiled alt media member, not in our group, now I know where those reports came from. But none of those mentions what they were getting at is particularly was towards that I was trashing people who bought dinars or zims or dongs. But none of those mentions have specifically mentioned the people who bought dinars, zims, dongs, to my knowledge anyway. And when I talk about the clowns and the RV, it's everything to do with the clowns who are selling it to the gullible people and taking advantage of them. So for those who clearly misunderstood what I have said, all references to the RV clowns are to do with the Chinese elders, the Rothschildians, the dragon groups, and either agency-paid alt-media goons or badly misled alt-media people who are all leading the public astray. For the record, I have discussed several times with Kim about how it could be a possibility, and that is all it is at this point, of getting the average people, not the clowns, who bought some of those currencies to get some of their money back. So clearly that's not dismissing those people, is it? Like I said, this has become a common theme recently, with profiled people throwing mud and totally misrepresenting what has been stated in the shows, and it's that common now I perceive it as an agenda to drive a wedge. It's not a surprise. But to make things crystal clear of my stance is against the people who promote and sell those currencies, not those who bought into the RV. But those who promoted and sold those currencies, my opinion of them is one of utter contempt. They knew, a lot of them did anyway. And over the last 5 years, they've been given the knowledge by several people outside of this group, never mind THI alone. And even one of the main promoters of the RV has told them they went down the wrong path. But these people continue with tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And we've explained in great detail that this RV nonsense is holding up the whole world. They're holding us hostage from moving forward, and that deserves much deriding for the people that still promote, not buy, that rubbish. For the record, I have every empathy with people who bought into all the varying internet scams that have been far too many. So I hope that finally clears up any of those who genuinely misunderstood what I was saying, and to those that use it for their agendas, failed again. So with the IMF pushing 134 countries into scrapping their currencies, they're thinking of scrapping all the currencies, oh my. And I thought the RV was about revaluing currencies, and now they're going to scrap it. Does that not mean in and of itself that the RV, which was a currency revaluation, will now not take place, as we said all along? Now, their latest, following the failed TRN and USN edition notes by the Federal Reserve, is for the world to go crypto. Again, so much for the people who were pushing crypto under the guise that crypto is getting round the cabal system. I wish that were true. It's just not. But like the BRICS, the RICS, it was all an illusion. BRICS was set up by Rockefeller and Rothschild families. You notice the BRICS did not involve America, the UK, France, or Germany. I wonder why. Because it was a full-scale transfer of the wealth from the West to the East is why. And yet we had people, oh, the BRICS are going to do this and the crypto's going to do that. No. Cryptos are fresh air tokens on a computer that you have zero control over. You might have a little bit now, later on you won't. And people still think that is valid or okay. Is not, or should this not raise a concern of the Orwell world we were warned about 30 years ago? Like the people in various countries who gave up their guns, they all got slaughtered straight after it. Russia, China, you name it. Turkey was another one. Slaughtered as and outed as dissidents and other trumped up crimes. And people with guns have a measure of control. Once they go, you lose that control. Likewise, people with cash, once it goes, you lose control. They know that and why they are trying to remove it. A cashless society is a great idea, but not whilst we have psychopathic families running around the world thinking they own everything, when in reality they own jack. Nothing. And all I ask is for people to think about it for 1 second if you are a supporter of cryptos and have learned how the cabal and the money people really operate. You go to work all week and they're going to give you tokens on a computer or a phone. What happens if you post a message on social media criticising the government when they've removed all the cash? At that point, would the government not be more resembling of a fascist dictatorship? And then they decide that your message was a criminal offence and they delete your online wallet as a punishment. They won't do that. Try telling that to the American people during the Great Depression, where they were denied access to their own banks. Or how they made an executive order making it illegal to own gold and silver and everyone had to hand it in. Or what about the people in Argentina? 2 years ago. What about the people of Venezuela now, where you're queuing up in 6 banks all day to get $4 out? Remember the story we did last year? What about what happened to the people of Greece and Cyprus recently? And you still think they wouldn't operate in that manner by taking all the cash and giving you computer tokens? We have to think better than this. And what we don't need is stupid people marching into an Orwellian virtual reality world with your hard-earned money and you getting tokens in return like you're in some giant fairground. Because if you do, enjoy the rides, people, because it'll be your last. Cryptos. David Rothschild has put out his forked tongue this week. Love to see the real tongue pop out and watch people react. Oh my. The ultra-liberal scion of the wealthiest Jewish banking dynasty in the world, decided to go on quite a nasty, profane Twitter rant against President Donald Trump, who had the temerity to criticise their Federal Reserve Bank, which is one, obviously, as all our members know, is one of the main sources of the Rothschilds' ill-gotten wealth. And Trump said the only problem with our economy is the Fed. 100% correct. He also said they don't understand necessary trade wars. Again, 100% correct, and neither do the portal people either. The trade wars are to do with the dragons, not the governments. They don't understand the strong dollar or even Democrat shutdowns over borders. So Mr. Rothschild's response was, shut the fuck up. That's what he said. Seriously, every time the president talks about the Fed, the markets tumble. Oh my. His own family's creating that. He needs the market to stabilise to save what is left of his presidency. Really, David? It's your family that's orchestrating the market crash. You may be able to kid some of the goons on the rest of the alt media, but you don't kid this show. He then went on. He, the president, is so fucking stupid he can't even manage just shutting the fuck up and doing nothing. Oh my. Potty mouth as well as lizard mouth. So it seems the Rothschildians are getting a tad pissy, does it not? Oh my. And the reason is the Roths are losing control of the Fed and are blaming Trump. Too funny. It's not to do with Trump. But again, these people make their own narrative up. But to Mr. Rothschild, you and your scumbag family were offered a more than generous deal to step down from your self-titled elitist perch, were you not? And what did you tell us? Yeah, go and F ourselves. Well, we carried on without you. And we didn't and don't really need you and your ilk to get by in this world. But that deal was made to speed things up to help the public get started. You see, these people are not interested in the public. They never have been. He, David, like Jared Rand and the Rand Corporation, have never been interested in the public. But suddenly now they've lost access to the trust and all the wealth is being returned to the rightful owners, the people of the world, not Rothschildians. Suddenly these parasites profess themselves to be humanitarian. Really? But the question remains, why weren't you all humanitarian when you had access to the trust and were actually looting the trust, which is why your contract was not renewed and why all the trustees were fired? Please answer that, David Rothschild. Answers on a cork-sized piece of paper, please, because there is none. So to David Rothschild, please shut your pie hole with your opinions. We're not interested in your opinions. Like yourself, they are of low vibration, and as a member of the one family who carries more reptilian DNA than any other family on this planet, it's kind of fitting, isn't it? Low vibration. Perhaps when you come a bit more human, we'll start to debate again. Until then, pipe down, laddie. So the Dems have control of the House, and have installed the Peace Shooter is a gateway gun in as their leader and Speaker of the House. And they've pinned their hopes on someone who's clearly one sandwich short of a picnic, and I wish them good luck with that. Now, predictably today, she led with quotes of possible impeachment of Mr. Trump based on erroneous information, all concocted by a paid-for report that involved the Blue Dragon Group in the UK, known as the Steele Report, which was all paid for by a Democratic Anne and her criminal cohorts, of which there are several within her own party, plus a few snakes in the Republican Party as well, and that will become more prevalent in the coming weeks and months. Yes, you, Mr. Pence, being one of them. But Pelosi appears to be unable to count, as well as a lack of insight displayed publicly on each interview she does. And yet, bizarrely, people in California still voted for this woman. To me, it defies belief, their lack of insight and inability to see through the illusion. But then, Hollywood is an illusion, is it not? So to impeach a president, you'll need 2/3 of the vote, and despite various other election frauds committed by Anne and others in the Democratic Party, you can't manipulate that election. Oops. Unbelievable. But they'll keep putting it out because sadly, a lot of the public are just completely unaware of anything that's actually going on, and we'll have a piece shortly that will show you the depth of it. There's a new drug flying around that's it literally boggles my mind, is who comes up with these ideas and thinks, oh, okay, I'll mix that with that and put some of that in, I'll add some of that in, and I'll kill myself. Anyway, crocodiles, the medical name is desomorphine, and is created, just listen to this, by mixing codeine with gasoline, paint thinner, hydrochloric acid, iodine, and red phosphorus. How do people come up with this shit? I'll mix all them together and I'll get high off it and go completely off my tree. Because the only ones that really do that type of research are the Black Budget Group, are they not? That then push it onto the public. Yeah, I mean, you just imagine the average guy coming up to you on the street and going, well, I'm going home, I'm going to get some codeine out, I'm going to throw some gasoline on it, and some paint thinners, hydrochloric acid, iodine, and red phosphorus. I mean, do people have these in their kitchen? Mind-boggling. So there are reported nearly 3 million users in Russia. Next genocide underway. And the epidemic began in Siberia and the Russian Far East. Now, what does this drug do? It causes the flesh to rot from the inside out, and the addict's skin becomes scaly, like a crocodile, hence the name, crocodile. The blood vessels burst and the surrounding tissue dies. Gangrene and amputations are a common result, and sometimes bone can be exposed. The drug high lasts around an hour and a half. Meanwhile, your leg rots off. Really? For an hour and a half. And the problem is, it's apparently 3 times cheaper to produce than heroin. And from the point when the addict first takes this deadly drug their life expectancy drops to just over 2 years. There's no going back. So the crocodile users who inject the substance can suffer horrifying symptoms such as their blood vessels bursting and their skin turns green and begins to rot away around the infected area. Now, the drug has been made available for the last decade and branded as a cheap alternative to heroin. Users are able to make it home for a tenth of the cost. Yes, that is subsidised, clearly. Compared to heroin. Someone's subsidised that and someone's doing eugenics on the Russian people again. Unbelievable. A Georgia police officer sadly died this week, 3 weeks after he was shot in the face, becoming the 145th cop to die in the line of duty this year, which is up from 129 in 2017. And there's obviously much Portal people outcry, and it's very sad that that police officer lost his life. And yes, the number of police killing civilians this last year now was 987. So as a cop, you're 7 times more likely to kill than be killed. And yet I don't hear the Portal people talking about that issue. You had 1,000 Americans killed. Well, they shouldn't have been misbehaving. Yeah, what, a traffic ticket is licensed to shoot someone in the back, like we saw a few times last year? Really? One of our members decided to do a test of a group she was involved in, I think. Yes, she. And put out a range of questions, which members of the Facebook will be aware of, but we have many more listeners that are not part of the Facebook, and I'd like to read these out. And it shows you the staggering lack of ignorance in this country. Staggering. First question was, we use the names United States of America, all capitals, and America, are they the same thing? Yes, 55%. No, 45%. Not bad. Not good, but not bad. Question 2. Is the Federal Reserve part of the government? 74% said, yes, it is part of the government. Really? 3/4 of the population think the Federal Reserve is part of the government. Oh my. 26% said no. 3. Do we have a government constitution? Yes, 79%. No, 21%. That's kind of predictable. The reality is we don't. We haven't had the constitution since 1871. But that's understandable. The Federal Reserve one is unforgivable, really. Question 4. Is income tax voluntary? Yes. 22%. 78% said no. It's compulsory. Really. Does America have a currency? 86% said yes, they do. 14% said no. We don't have a currency. We've got a Federal Reserve debt note. It's not currency. 6. Is your birth certificate traded on the New York Stock Exchange? Yes, 11%. No, 89%. They have a lot to learn to do. Does America have a government? Yes, 84%. No, 16%. Oh my. We haven't had a real American government since 1861. 8. Does your income taxes go to the American government? 80% said yes and 20% said no. No. None of it. 0 income taxes goes to the government. 0. And everything goes to the Federal Reserve and the Rothschildians until Kim decides to swipe it. Does the government work for the people or the corporations? 23% said the people and 77% said the corporations. So here we are in 2019 now, and the internet has been going for just over 20 years now, and we have these staggeringly knowledge lacking answers of people born in this country, knowing so little about it, and it beggars belief. And it shows how far behind they are in terms of basic knowledge, never mind some of the groundbreaking shows that we've done on telling, like, so the real history of Russia and India and many other countries, the factions, the control system, the ET stuff, and various other topics. When 3/4 to 80% don't even know the basics, and that is the basics of how this government and this country works. Time for some teaching, not educating, is badly required going forward, methinks. That would be a good opening show on a truth channel, being quite honest. Unlearn the lies. Final piece this evening. We have completed the year review, which went from 1 part to 2 parts to ended up with 4 in the past week. From all accounts, people in general loved them and were a bit surprised at how far we've come and how much was done or achieved in 2018. And so much was packed into last year. Today's show was kind of difficult to write up enough this week, but that will change again this year as other avenues will open up to us and more knowledge will be revealed. So, as I said earlier, for the first time since I started doing radio shows in July of 2013, I was invited to go on a show that was not connected to Cosmic Voice or THI in any way, which is kind of staggering, really, given the information that I've put out and also retain. But perhaps that show this week will turn out to be the first of many this year, as more people are moving away from what I mentioned earlier of the pre-2014 knowledge base and into the now. Now, new members to our group will have a lot of catching up to do, as they've come from various groups promoting something else is going to save them, be it the RVs or the ETs or the Blue Avians or even Trump or some other divine intervention. But I can promise you will not hear that type of rhetoric here. Despite my connections with the Manor World Holding Trust, only we save us, and that is that. No ifs, no buts or maybe. We have to save us, and we only get one chance. And with a steady and increasing influx to our group and others, we will have sufficient to prevail. So I want to give thanks to Jim at Ground Crew Command for having us on, and the feedback from his members was kind of overwhelming and a big wow. Jim told me after the show, and it is expected I will be called to go back on their show again. Alan from OYM mentioned he's also been bombarded with requests for info on THI and also the Manor World Holding Trust following our show with them and with Randy just before Christmas. It appears Alan is performing a great role as the THI secretary and he's sending me an invoice for secretarial services this week, he said. But this is what it's all about, supporting each other. And whilst I may get some flack for outing certain ones in alt media not doing the right thing, either by promoting scams or promoting fear porn or promoting agency scripts or covens, I do wish all of those this year decide to drop that bullshittery and come and join us. There is enough room for us all to have an input, providing it's not agenda driven. I would love to see Wilcock and Corey call out the scripts they were reading and come out with the real truth. Would love all those who still promote the RV to quit and get behind the trust. And I would love the programme members in the alt community to realise that they've been fed bullshit like Shane told them all they had been fed, and come and have some real input into improving all of our lives. Service to self people will be like police or ambulance sirens this year going forward. They will stick out like a sore thumb. Please stop that and rebalance with a measure of service to others. Now, the olive branch we extended from Randy and I to Corey, I will extend to all those people mentioned between this show and Randy's to step down, tell the truth to your followers, and then come and step up, come and join us, and let's all ride the truth and trust train. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.